What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Pilsners and Prelims. This is Andy alongside my friend here, Rick, aka Samurai Ghost, for this one. We'll be previewing the UFC Fight Night between Alan and Craig. Super excited about this one, Rick. Not just for that fight, but also for the other ones that are going to be featured on the main card. Another fight that I'm really excited about on this card is the Jordan Leavitt and Chase Hooper fight. The casual MMA fan, or casual UFC fan rather, may not necessarily know what's about to happen in this fight, but for those of you that have been following Jordan Leavitt and Chase Hooper for some time now, you know it's going to be absolutely nuts on the mat. Some of the other ones I'm super excited about too. I really am looking forward to the Nick Aguirre and Peyton Talbot fight. Peyton Talbot's coming in off of that Dana White Contender Series fight, and Nick Aguirre is coming off of one feature in the UFC where he came in on short notice and lost. So he's here to redeem himself off super tall odds too. You would look at the odds for that one in the main event and think, gee, how does the dog even have a chance? Well, we'll be telling you a little bit more about that. Just touching on the UFC 295 real quick. Any thoughts there on how the last card went before you want to talk about this card?
Yeah, so I'm excited for this card as well, and I'll get to this card in a second. But UFC 295, I thought really you can't really exceed expectations, but I thought it was damn close. I mean, both title fights for as long as they lasted were entertaining, and I felt like there was a clear winner in both. Like there wasn't any doubt left in anyone's mind. There wasn't a decision. Like it was clear. Like X is better than Y. Like I'm blanking on fighter names at the moment as I'm thinking about this card, but. Like Alex Pereira is much better, or not much better, but he got the best of Yuri Prochazka, and same with the co-main as well. I mean, like it was a good card where there was a lot of finishes, and I was able to sweep the main card. So hopefully we can do that again this week as well. All right, and to summarize the UFC 295 card as it was. We finished and we swept the main card at 5-0, plus 5.75 units, which fantastic way to end the main card. Hit on every single fight, went 1-0 on each fight. Lopez, Saint Denis inside the distance, Andrade straight up, Aspinall straight up, Pereira straight up. So 5-0 on the main card. Unfortunately, the prelims weren't as kind to us. 3-4-1 on the prelims, ending me at 8-4-1. Up 5.32 units. So quite the main card for me, quite the entire card in general. And that brings us net to about just under a unit lost. So a bad 294 in Fight Night for me, but made up for it. And looks like we'll be able to continue to cash here moving forward. So, Andy, how about you? How did UFC 295 end up treating you?
Yeah, Rick, so I also had a successful UFC 295. Starting off with the main card, I went 4-1, so not as perfect as your 5-0, but my one miss being the Tommy Aspinall and Sergey Pavlovich fight, not making it past one round. Honestly, I still jumped out of my seat and cheered when the bet lost, so was super fired up for Tommy Aspinall that he got the interim belt. Couldn't happen for a better guy and a better story. That being said, it was only a 1-unit loss. The rest of my wins with the big Andrade win at plus 165 for a unit and a half, as well as another with Alex. I on his money line, I put a unit and a half too. So totaled up to plus 4.975 units. So almost 5 units of profit on the main card. It makes up for my losses on the prelims. I did not have a single win on the prelims from a betting standpoint. Lost on Borjas, lost on Kong, and lost on Gordon with the Sadikov push, as well as I told you guys I was going to provide Ursig as a parlay leg. And I never gave a second leg, so I'm not going to count that as a win. So I realized that after the podcast came out, I was like, holy shit, I never gave a second leg. But yeah, it's a huge main card for both you and I. 5-0 to Rick, 4-1 to me. Super pumped, hoping that we can roll that same luck right into the UFC Fight Night coming up this weekend. But from a pick standpoint, Rick, how do we do for actually picking the fights as a whole?
And as far as records go, as far as picking the straight, who wins the fight, I ended up going 10-2 on UFC 295. Andy going 9-3, with our one difference being Tabitha Ricci and Lupi Godinez. That brings our overall record since we started a few fight nights ago to Andy at 18-10-2, and myself at 28-2. And Ben, behind the scenes, I've got you at 0-1, picking Prochazka with your only official pick. So all good by us, doing pretty well, and hope to continue the winning ways. We'll be covering the main card, all 6 fights on the main card, as well as just a couple on the prelims. Picking a couple of our favorite fights off the prelims. There's some dodgy prelims here with some debuting fighters, some fighters that are struggling, and we'll get to a couple of our favorites. And throughout the week, make sure to be following us on Twitter as a shameless plug, but at Rick HH Sports and at Andy HH Sports for the other fights. We might have some plays throughout the week, but nothing that I'm looking to lock in right now. And yeah, so make sure to follow there, but. Definitely some fun fights across the prelims and main card here. Definitely feels like a fall off as far as quality goes, as far as top end. But there are some decent prospects, as you mentioned. Peyton Talbot making his UFC debut at 6-0. Not every day you see a 6-0 and a 7-1 UFC fighter on the main card. So a little bit different, but should be exciting. Amanda Ribas back in action after getting knocked out again. So we'll talk about that, as well as the main event. We haven't spoken about that yet, but Brendan Allen and Paul Craig. We all know how Paul Craig fights are going to go, one way or another, but it never goes to decision. So we'll at least get one finish there, and we're guaranteed of that. And if we're not, then you guys can all berate me on social media. So.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this one because I feel like there's a lot of value on dogs. We saw me cash in on a pretty big dog play with Jessica Andrade at plus 165 on the UFC 295 card. She closed at plus 190, so hopefully you guys heard me say that later and got better value than what I was able to lock in on the pod. But yeah, she had a dominant performance in UFC 295. Had another unit and a half play cash on Pareda as well. So a really solid UFC 295 card that we're looking to roll straight into this UFC Fight Night before we have a week off next week because there's no UFC card. So we'll pick right back up at the beginning of December, or I guess end of November rather is when the podcast would release for that that UFC Fight Night that I believe is in Austin, Texas, to close the year for the Fight Nights. That is because they head out to Shanghai and then they've got the pay-per-view that closes the year. So only 3 cards left after this one. Excited to close out in November with a bang though, and get you all started with the first prelim that we have selected, which is Charles Johnson taking on Rafael Estevam. Stay tuned with us as we go ahead and break down a couple of the prelims that Rick and I have our eye on this week.